Okay, enough with me trying to sing the Star Spangled Banner, although it was kind of terrible. The American Revolution's here! Yay! Let's get the thing started with. So, we have to start off with the seeds of the American Revolution, which doesn't happen until like 1651. It starts off there, because then there's this long 7 Years' War, where Britain's all like, yeah, okay, yeah, give me that colony! In America, and the other countries are all like, no. Why not? No, say, accept our terms or face total destruction. And they're all like, you can't even totally destruct your own tea. And they're all like, let's see about that. And they one-punch KO'd them throughout the whole war. But that one-punch KO was a costly victory. £160 million victory cost, especially. And that was basically the bill. And then they realized that they had to protect the colonies from all that. So they're all like, hey, since we protected them from other invaders, then how about we just go ahead and make them pay us back, because we're literally in debt. So that happens. They're all like, hey, colonies, can you like go ahead and pay us back, because you kind of owe us as we paid your stuff. And the Americans are all like, no. And the only main reason why they say no was because they had no representation in parliament at all, because until then they had the freedom to rule themselves. But now suddenly Britain comes in after the war, and they're all like, pay us back the money or else. They were pissed off about the fact that, well, there was that the taxes were high, but they were actually more pissed off with the fact that they had no say in these taxes. And they were kind of annoyed by that, so they're all like, no taxation without representation, and boom. Yeah, those are the starts of the revolution. And then suddenly, Britain are all like, yeah, let me put in some taxes for you. So that happens. They put in those not so ridiculously high taxes on a lot of things. By a lot of things, I mean everything. Glass, paper, pamphlets, apparently playing cards, ink, books, oil, and loads of other things. Even the very popular drink tea, which is stereotypically British, but isn't. Stereotypically, it should be Chinese. And in fact, in the house I'm living in right now, there's a tea table there that the old owners of this house, the old livers in this house, just left behind and can't. And since they still own the house, they're all like, do not throw this thing away or you'll be kicked out. And we have no idea to what to use for it, so we just put it in my dad's room, where my cat uses it as a sunbathing place. Turns out he has 4 sunbathing places now. So I guess my cat's living in luxury. Anyways, back to the revolution. And apparently they did all of that using stamps, and which is why it was called the Stamp Act. And with that, loads of things have to change. Oh my gosh, I almost clicked end. Then I would have to remake this whole episode, but I don't want to do that. It's already 3 minutes in. Anyway, so that happened. And because of that Stamp Act, this is basically how it works out. Any person who's selling this stuff puts a stamp on it, and then they also have to pay for the stamp, because stamps aren't free, apparently. That's why it's called a stamp tax. Now, of course, then the colonists did the most sensible thing. Boycott the Brits. And with that, they had to take away the Stamp Act. And then they introduced the Townshend Acts, and which basically did all the made a tax on everything that I just told you earlier. Glass, there's a tax for that. Metal, there's a tax for that. Paper, there's that. Yeah, literally everything. Tea, there's a tax for that. And then suddenly the colonists kept boycotting it, which hit the British economy very hard, and so they had to revoke the tax. And so they still need money. There's still a big amount of debt. And so what do? Well, alright, this is and then the leader of Britain, this handsome guy over here, was like, okay, this is getting ridiculous. They're my colonies, and I should be able to do whatever I want with them. Revoke every tax except for the tea tax. Let me say it again. Revoke every tax except for the tax on tea. And then keep taxing them all, so we can still get out of this sinking, and soaring debt. Ouch. And so that happened, and then the colonists were all like, well, they're coming. And then they needed to choose a general in the General Assembly. Now, of course, not everyone that we know today who was at the General Assembly was there. But first of all, they had to have loads of other things. They had Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, and then they decided like George Washington was like the man, the legend, the famous guy, George Washington. And George Washington was made to be the main general of the army. Also, it was later reported that was a bit unpopular. So this is what happened. This red area here is the Brits. This blue area here is the Americans. And later, we'll even have a lot of other people coming in too. But for now, this is just enough that they need. This is just enough. Firstly, they had loads of things. They had lots of problems here. Firstly, the Brits came in droves, and they're all like, "Let's go get Pennsylvania," because that was the capital at the time. And so then they came here, and then suddenly they got intercepted by an undertrained American force, which literally battered them everywhere they went. And then eventually, this undertrained battle force was able to put siege on the most trained, highly skilled army in the world. And these guys were all like, "Oh no, what are we going to do?" No, the next thing that the Americans did is all like, "Wait, there's a British fort here, let's go get it." And so they went here, and then they sent a guy named Benedict Arnold to go here, but also announcing to him, Alan Green was also coming in. Just before they got to the fort, they met, and then they had a heated debate on who was in charge. Benedict Arnold and Alan Green had a debate of who was in charge. They're like, "I'm in charge. No, I'm in charge. I'm in charge. No, I'm in charge. I'm in charge. No, I'm in charge. I'm in charge. No, I'm in charge." And this went on for a while. And Alan Green just said, "Well, yeah, like what the heck? We'll just go to them ourselves." And then Arnold had no army, so he had to call him the leader. And so Alan Green and them fortified the fort without any bloodshed. Apparently, they took it by complete surprise. And then they were all like, "Yay, we won!" But hey, what happened to the other guy who he sent? And then George Washington was all like, George Washington and all the General Assembly people were all like, "Great job, Alan, but what happened to the other guy that we sent to capture that fort?" And Alan's all like, "Who? Benedict Arnold?" And then George Washington's all like, "Benedict Arnold." And Alan's all like, "Never heard of him." Ouch, for Benedict Arnold. No wonder. And then after a while, another British plan was this. Since they basically had control over this side, and since the Americans were surrounded on all sides here, and they basically ended up coming here. And they decided to like cut the colony in half because that would just mess up their communications. And the guys in the north did surprisingly well. However, the guy in the south was all like, "What the heck? I'm not going this way. I'm going to go this way." And he did successful, and he even captured Pennsylvania. And it was like, "Yay!" Back in the north, however, the Americans were all like, "Okay, no reinforcements are coming. Let's go get them, boys!" And they got them, and they retook everything, and even getting a little bit of land too. Also, the general that decided to cut the heck and then go and cap Pennsylvania, he was the main general. He was the leader general of the whole British army, so he got fired. And George Washington was all like, "Yeah, I'm the best." And he had to keep up morale because it was winter. And his soldiers are all like mutiny and are like, "Okay, we're just going to desert or we're just going to go ahead and do some mutiny." And that worked out so far. Suddenly it came summer. And on both sides of the army fought to get each other. And then they died of heat stroke on both sides instead of being shot by gunshots. And they did one more remarkable thing. Since their old flag that they've been using for a big bunch of while had the British flag on it, and they were like, "Cut the crap," and then decided to turn the flag into something else, with these 13 stars each representing a state. Hooray! Now, back to battle. Now, lots of the British actually saw that the South had a lot of support for the British people, and they're all like, "Yeah, that was right." And they were even able to capture all of this part, which had a lot of slaves in it too. The slaves were freed, like the ones that weren't that weren't loyalists, that were rebellious, were freed, and they joined them side, and then loyalists started attacking their rebellionists, like the people who were rebelling on them. And instead of the rebellious people fettering and fettering the British loyalist people, it was the opposite now. And I haven't even mentioned the main reason of the start of the war, the Boston Massacre, because also that is one of the most important reasons. That was one of the most important events in this world. According to my time limit, I do not have time to put it in here. And this is basically what the U.S. map looks like right now, and it's not going well for the Americans. And then suddenly, Benjamin Franklin was sent to go get the French. The French arrived! And they arrived in droves, like a picture them with white. The French arrived here and they're all like, Brits, hand over the fort! And then the British were all like, we're doomed. Yeah, and finally, even after the French gave the US Army actual military training, a rigorous actual European military training, they were able to turn into the greatest war of all, and they were able to turn the tide of war. And finally, the Americans won the battle. King George was all like, fight till the end, but he lost a lot of support in Parliament, and so he had to concede. In the terms of the Treaty of Paris, it was basically said that America would get this much land from Britain, where all British colonies from there will be American. America will have to send reparations to Britain of what they owed Britain, including the damage that they did. And that they need a new government. The first presidential election was basically a lot of people trying to convince this guy towards wanting to become president. And by a lot of people, I mean literally everyone. And it was because of him he made the president what it is. He said, call me Mr. President, because at the time that was a bit that was very, very modest. He made sure that he could only serve 4-year terms, and there can only be a maximum of 2 years of 4 terms. The president had to be voted, and if the election, and he also made sure that there was an electoral college. Also, lots of people think the electoral college sucks, including me. And he made all the power limitations. He even made sure that there was a little cabinet that each person got to choose, because he knew that every cabinet, every president, no matter how sure he said that he was the greatest president ever and he was the smartest man alive, he still didn't know everything. No one did. And then, the British started funding Native Americans to fight the Americans. So technically, the War of 1812 was the Second American Revolution. So, yeah, that's about it. But in the end, the winners was the Americans. So until next time, people, see you then. Bye.